Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hajicek. And welcome to this edition of Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hajicek. I'm just looking at you over there in studio, and I see you busy doing something, Doug, and it caught my attention. What are you doing over there?
What did you see me doing?
I don't know. It looked like you're shuffling papers or something.
Yeah, I'm shuffling papers. Yeah. First, I got to have.
We've got a great guest tonight. We have Ken Walker on, bottom of the hour. Go hang out for that.
The only
Ken Walker.
By the way, it's the only documentary. Ken Walker, star of Big Fur. It's the only documentary I've seen now 3 times.
Really?
Yeah, I like it much. Yep.
I'm gonna have to check it out. I have not seen it yet.
Oh, geez.
Because I have been so busy.
Shame on you.
With work. I know, it's horrible. Ken Walker is the star of Big Fur documentary, as Doug just alluded to. Now airing, of course, on Amazon Prime. So if you're listening to this on podcast form and not live with us, pause it right now. Go watch the movie. We'll wait for you. Okay, we're back. So I'm assuming you've watched the movie by now.
Yes.
So you have an understanding what we're going to be talking about.
Yep.
He is a world champion taxidermist. He also built the most realistic Bigfoot, life-size Bigfoot based on the famed Patty film. So that'd be Patterson-Gimlin film. So more about him in the bottom of the hour. So hang up for that. You'll have a lot of fun. I know I'm looking forward to it. And super duper nice guy. Talked to him off air. Seems like a very, very genuinely nice gentleman. So, Doug, how you doing?
Doing good.
Surviving?
It's been a crazy week.
Yeah, well, tell us about your crazy hijinks, unless you can't. In that case, we don't.
First off, my 2 boys ended up with COVID, right? And they're vital.
So they got the bug.
Oh God, yes. And they had a fever. Well, today would be like 12 days of fever.
To have this fever.
Fevers, yeah.
Oh my gosh, they're hot-blooded.
Spitting up, Yeah, I mean, serious. I mean, they had it really bad, and of course, urgent care visits, but they're okay. I think today they kind of turned the corner a little bit. Blaine was shopping for an ATV
when he got sick.
Well, no, today he started feeling.
Oh, today.
Yeah,
so he wants to buy a new ATV.
Yeah, so I knew he started feeling better.
Gotcha,
Alex still under the weather. But I think they're going to be okay. But yeah, that's nothing to mess with. Just not fun.
No, not very good at all.
And they're only in their 20s.
Yeah. Well, so they're going to be just fine. They're going to pull right through this thing because they're young, they're strong, they're healthy. So, yeah. But still, our prayers and thoughts are with them to make sure they make it through a full recovery. Because there's some long lingering effects. I did know an individual that got it in, I think it was October. And they've been well over it now for a while, but they are still on oxygen because it affected their lungs so badly.
Yeah, with blood clots.
Kind of affects different people in different ways. Yep. It doesn't seem like it's a one size. These are the symptoms. Like the flu pretty much affects everyone by and large the same way.
I got it a long time ago, which I'm sure I never got tested, but it was very early in. Mm-hmm. And I had a fever for almost 14 days. And I knew this was not normal. And I can tell you right now, I've had like a slight headache ever since. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit more fatigue, a little bit, it's been weird. I just have not really been myself.
Yeah, luckily, knock on wood, and I will. There we go. Sound effect for you. Yeah. I have not gotten it yet. And hopefully I won't, because I hear it's horrible.
Yeah.
But I do take precautions not to get it. But I work with the public. So that could happen anytime. So, I just safeguard myself the best I can.
That's a good thing. So yesterday I was sitting there and I was doing some UFO research and I was thinking, I wonder when the first photograph of a UFO was taken. And I'm like, I didn't know the answer. Do you?
Do I?
Yeah.
Well, let's see.
Don't cheat.
Oh, I was going to say, Google to the rescue.
No.
I don't know when that first photo would have been taken. Through your research, did you uncover it?
Yes, I did. 1870.
Was the very first photo.
Of a UFO.
And this, was it like the Texas incident?
No. That didn't happen up till, let's see, I know when that happened. That was with that Judge Proctor in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
The Aurora, Texas thing where they supposedly buried the creature and dumped the wreckage into the well, and then somebody bought the property and got sick, and it's kind of a weird story. No,
do you ever want to get permission as a filmmaker to test these legends?
Oh, absolutely. That's why
we're
addicted to looking.
Yeah. Just to either to see if it actually passes the legend test or fails. Now, as far as this Aurora, Texas incident, are you aware of anyone that's actually dug into the well to find what could be left?
Yes, UFO Files did back for History Channel. And they actually put diver down in the well. They recovered one piece that they identified as a water pump piece of aluminum. So they didn't find anything weird in the well. So the whole thing very well might be just lore, whatever. But here's where remember that photograph I told you, 1870. But by 1880, people worldwide were reporting UFOs. By 1880? Yes. And they called them, of course, mystery airships. They didn't call them UFOs.
Yeah.
But Thomas Edison got blamed for all these UFOs. They thought it was him because, he was this amazing inventor who was just coming out.
Yeah, he was the Elon Musk of their time. Really?
Yes, he was.
Thomas Edison.
I would even say way beyond Elon Musk because, this guy invented this, things out of thin air could you imagine inventing a phonograph out of thin air?
I couldn't
Sewing
imagine.
machine out of thin air. Just everything out of thin air. Light bulb out of thin air. How in the world does one guy? I know, I could go on and on, but how does somebody come up with that many things? Just poof. Think about that.
Well, you're an inventor.
Yeah, but I don't come out of things from thin air. I come up with things from a need, and usually they're an adaptation, or something. I'm like, God, I wished I had this. Is there a way to do it?
Well, the old saying is necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, but you're not sitting in 1850, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, I want to listen to music.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because he had this, I read his bio years ago. There was a bunch of books written about him. Yeah. And I'd read his bio, and the things that he was a man that was far, far beyond his time, far ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And he invented, a lot of his inventions we're still using. Yeah, and we've actually improved upon them, but had it not been for him, we wouldn't have any idea of the telephone.
Right. No, there's just so many things that he did. The film projector. It's just, to me, it's still mind blowing. If you really dig into his past, it's absolutely incredible. But the fact that he blamed for flying saucers back in the 1800s is so cool.
Do you kind of take that as part, how do I want to say this, a compliment, and part, being angry about it because he didn't do it, obviously, but also he had to stop and think to himself how accomplished he'd become to where people revered him highly as an inventor.
He actually had to issue a written statement, that he was not responsible. And I think, oh my God, that's just so cool. And then if you flash forward to today, we still really don't know anything. The government's now, of course, getting blamed versus Thomas Edison.
Yeah.
But I think.
Well, because the government wasn't anywhere near as big back then as they are now.
Yep.
So it makes sense. I mean, people were reporting it and they were seeing these things flying. Now, you got to remember, this is long before anything was flying that we were making.
Right.
I mean, we weren't in the air yet. We were still firmly on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So everything that people saw that was flying.
But we had hot air balloons.
We had those, but those were easily, people they knew what they were. Yep. Hot air balloon is slow, and when you did see it, it was there for a very long time. It took it a long time to go anywhere because it was all at the mercy of the wind. But when they're talking about cigar-shaped craft. They're talking about things that are moving at great speed.
Okay. So here's the second question for you. What do you think the thing looked like that was photographed in 1870? What would be your guess?
Is that the cigar-shaped craft?
Yeah, it was cigar-shaped, yeah.
Wow. Man, so since 1870 and before then, we still don't know a whole lot.
No, we don't.
We're still with those same questions that our ancestors had in the 1870s.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And now we blame Elon for all that flying saucer.
Now we blame Elon and other people, but
he has been.
I don't know, man.
He has been blamed.
I would like to, I guess, know more, especially about the wreckages from way back when, and explore that more. And hopefully someone does explore that more, because it was more than just that one crash. Several.
Yeah. Well, the first one was Cape Girardeau in 1941, which is, I believe, in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really interesting because there were police and firemen and military. And then if it wasn't for this priest that actually went there to read last rites to apparently these aliens that were dying, or an alien that was dying, he had written in his diary. Then his daughter discovered the diary and she went public. Then they found more witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
But if it wasn't for that priest, we wouldn't even know about it.
Yeah, we'd have no idea.
Then it was, Roswell and 47, and, it kind of went on from there.
Well, yeah, because back then it was all about the written record.
Yep.
And had it been overlooked and he not written that down and he didn't have family, we would not know at all. You're right.
Yep.
So, I mean, I wonder how many sightings from that era that were really spectacular went without ever being reported.
Where would you report it? Do you live out in the middle?
Or at least written down. I know I was talking to a witness of a UFO just yesterday that he witnessed the one over Lake Superior that was just massive, and it was a triangle shaped.
Oh.
And we were talking, and it was so big it was blocking the sun out.
Whoa.
The craft was. We were discussing it. It flew right over Highway 61 along the North Shore. Up by
the zoo.
Yeah. And he was one of the witnesses that actually pulled over and watched this thing. And it was, when I asked him how high it was in the air, and he said, well, it was brushing the treetops as it was coming through.
Cool. Well, I've never seen anything like that. Someday, maybe.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Some of the people involved, it was kind of funny because, this happened a year and a half ago. And I asked him, why did you never come forward? Of course, fear is still there. What would my neighbors think? What would my friends think? What would, these people think if I came out and said, yeah, I saw this craft?
So David L. is he's obviously listening to us live somewhere. He's out in Seattle. He writes, I think this is a quote from Thomas Edison. He writes, the genius, hold on, my phone keeps shutting off. The genius hangs around the laboratory day and night. If anything happens, he's there to catch it. Thomas Edison.
That is true. You got to be there. Mr. Ellis is absolutely correct.
Yep.
And great quote, by the way. Thomas Edison, man. I don't know that there's anyone now in our lifetime that you could slap the Edison tag on. Do you know of anybody, Doug? That can even hold a candle?
Not to bring things to market that just completely. That'd be like equivalent would be like somebody just suddenly coming out with an iPhone and not having any cell phones. That cell phone technology hadn't even been invented. Yeah. And all of a sudden, this guy goes, "Oh, here."
Yeah. By the way, here's this.
Yeah.
Try this for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Think about the projector. Think about the projector, like moving images. Like, oh my God, that would have been so mind blowing to be live back then. He had a hand in inventing, rubber too. He was working on rubber, which really changed industry worldwide. Because think about it, there was no rubber at one point. Think about all the things that rubber is involved in every time you go to the grocery store. Yeah. If it wasn't for rubber, you wouldn't be driving.
That is true. Without the rubber, you wouldn't have the weather seals in your car and you get wet.
Right. And he was friends with I believe Firestone. And I believe Edison was working on like plant materials, trying to turn it into rubber. They all knew that it was really needed. They were all working on it, and they all had some degree of success. But it was actually Firestone that figured out how to vulcanize it or give it a memory. Mm-hmm. In other words, raw rubber doesn't have a memory. Or very little memory. You can stretch it and it'll stay put. It won't snap back. But as the story goes, it's really interesting. Firestone had mixed sulfur, right? And it didn't do anything. And he was disgusted, had thrown it in the fire. He was actually disgusted with all the experiments, had thrown that one sample into the fire. Well,
and he discovered vulcanization.
The next day, somebody was cleaning the fireplace out, and out bounced this piece. Yeah. And I think he was shown this, and it had the memory.
How many inventions happen through that? Accidental inventions. Yep. That just, they think they're a failure, and it turns out to be the biggest discovery they're looking for.
You were an accidental invention.
I probably was. Oh. I almost took a job today in Antarctica.
Oh my God.
I did. Yeah. I was contacted by a company because my side job, I also tinker with mechanics.
Yeah.
I'm actually have a degree in mechanics, and they were looking for an individual to go up to Antarctica for a year.
Yeah.
To maintain their small engine equipment, snowmobiles, ATVs,
good knowing you.
Stuff like that.
It was good. It was good knowing you, Joel.
Well, no. I was gonna go. I was really thinking about it. I'm a married man with children, as many of the listeners know. It was an interesting idea because I like adventure, and I can't think of any greater adventure than going to Antarctica. But a year is a long time. Yeah. And being a married man, I'm not sure that would be the wisest decision. But a little part of me really wants to go. But it's for a whole year. And you're gone, of course. And they call them somewhat harsh conditions in the description of the environment.
I talked to Will Steger about his, when he walked across Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And the problem with doing something like that, you come back and you pace the floor. You come home and life is just so normal at that point that you lose your mind, part of it. You just can't
see that.
You can't go back to yourself anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I've had those problems where you just get back from an Arctic trip and, you know, you've got 10 days of excitement and then you come back and then it's, you know, kids and mortgages and mowing lawn. And, you know, it's just kind of like, it's hard to adjust.
Mundane sets in. The mundane life comes back to you.
Right. And you get restless.
Yeah. So you've been to the Arctic, am I correct? You've been to Antarctica?
Many times. Yep. Just not Antarctica, but Arctic Circle.
Yeah, you've been in the Arctic Circle. Someone would argue that we live in the Arctic Circle, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
So I was reading the qualifications, and they're quite extensive before they're going to let you go to Antarctica, Doug. I mean, you got to do a full psychological test to make sure that you can deal with, in their words, extreme solitude.
Is there any requirement to own mittens?
No, that didn't come up in the discussion. No mittens in what they sent me. But I would assume you're going to Antarctica, they may provide a mitten or two.
It's actually, look, it's better than isolation. You're actually trapped with a whole bunch of people. Mm-hmm. You know, small town basically of people. You know, you're not going to get out of that location, but you're living, breathing, eating, doing everything with a group of people.
But it's not like you can just get up and go take a walk.
No.
That was something in the paperwork they sent me. You know, it's not like you can just go for a little Sunday stroll there.
Yep.
It's very monitored.
Right.
But I thought about it.
Read the list. I want to hear the list. Then I've got a weird story about Antarctica. Well,
let me pull up the list. The list that they had sent me because they were looking to hire me. And again, I don't know if the listeners know this or not, but I am a 46, almost 47-year-old man. And my days of Antarctic travel probably are, well, not there anymore. You know, I don't think that I would be able to hack it personally. But let me give you some of the qualifications for those individuals that might be able to hack it. My phone is opening here. The salary now was a little low. This company is offering $1,100 a week, which I thought was a little low for that, what they want. You must have a driver's license. You must have U.S. work authorization, of course, high school equivalency, all the normals. General duties would be to repair equipment in extreme conditions, sometimes in the elements in open locations. Meaning that if it breaks down in the middle of an expedition or what they're doing, you have to get your happy rear end out there to fix it. Now, they go on, there's a footnote saying temperatures could drop as much as 70 below zero. That's crazy, Doug.
No,
could you imagine living 70 below zero?
Well, we damn near do it here.
Well, we do. And you must also be able to get along with others in a field camp situation. You must have strong people skills. You must have strong conflict resolution skills. Successful applicants must require that you are required to pass a deep psychological profile analysis.
See, I'm going through this list and I'm just going, nope.
Right.
Not for me, for you.
You must sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, where you've been in Antarctica and what you did in Antarctica.
Yeah. Just in case you have to fix a flying saucer.
Yeah, I would. Now that's what I keyed into. I said to myself, I understand this list, but why the NDA? And this is for the government. This is going up there. This is contracting through the government. and they want you to sign. I'm sure it's something mundane or something to do with national security. But my mind went right away to the movie The Thing. Remember Kurt Russell, The Thing?
I love that movie.
Right there. Boom. There's something more going on. That's what I thought to myself. I'm probably wrong, but who knows? So, but I'm not going to be going to Antarctica anytime soon.
Yeah, because then I'd have to find a new co-host.
You would, and you can't replace. You already tried to replace me.
Hey, they have the internet.
I'm irreplaceable.
They'd have the internet down there. You could do it from there.
It's very spotty, and there's more internet access. Get this, is limited to 10 minutes per day.
Okay.
Per individual. So they'll give you like 10 minutes to check your emails, and that's all you got. You know, there ain't no Netflixing going on up there.
A lot of DVDs.
A lot of DVDs. Now, I did know an individual years ago that he was a submariner in the Navy. And he took a job with to the International Antarctic, whatever it was. He was a maintenance guy up there. And he told me he spent 6 months underwater at one point in a nuclear sub, or 3 months, whatever it was, whatever the record was. He said it was harder being in Antarctica than it was being under the water. And I asked him, well, why is that? He said, because you see the sun, but you can't go outside. You see these things, but you can't go outside. At least in a sub, you're in darkness.
Yeah.
Your environment is all you know, it's darkness. But when you're looking outside and every fiber of your being is seeing the sun that you're and you want to go outside, it is really hard to stop yourself. So
it's because it's cold.
Because it's too cold to go outside.
But there's other times of the year it's sunny all day, all night.
Yeah. But anyhow, if you want to apply for this job, you can find it. It is currently listed on Indeed. If you want to go check it out and apply, if you think that you have the qualifications or you think you can pass all the requirements, which are quite stringent, by the way. And if you can do all that and you can get up to the Antarctic, let us know what it's like for you when you get back. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
No comment. I can't even find someone to work in Minneapolis, let alone Antarctica.
What do you mean? You're having a hard time filling positions?
Well, it's tough. Nobody wants to work.
Well, you can do a promo if you want for your company right here, right now for qualified applicants.
No, I'll pass.
All right. Well, I want to throw that out to you because it's strange times. Call for strange action sometimes. And I do know what you mean. I know a lot of business owners, and they have said that they have very hard time filling the ranks.
Nobody wants to work. They can make more staying home.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. That's a hard thing to compete with these days. So, Doug, I am not going to Antarctica. Like I said, it was attractive there for about 2 seconds of my life because I like adventure. This one is, This is not something I would definitely want to do. How about you? Would you have gone in your younger days?
No.
If you had a chance?
No, just because, I mean, if you were single and had no children, yeah, sure. Then I would. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But for a whole year?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I mean, I could do that for a year. But you wouldn't want to do it if you had family you're going to miss.
Yeah, I think that anyone that's listening that would be interested, definitely talk to your family first. Make sure it's something that you guys could do, that everyone could live with for a year.
There is a documentary, I think it's on Netflix, about living in Antarctica and working there. It's quite good, actually. I don't know the name of it. I can't remember the name, but it's, it can be found. I found it.
Yeah. Very cool. We got to get out of here. We can come back. We're going to have Ken Walker with us. And we're going to be talking about taxidermy, Bigfoot, and what they have in common with each other, what he has done, his accomplishments. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey, girl. School zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hajicek. Tonight, Doug, we got a great guest tonight. Well, they're always great guests, but this one I'm really interested in talking with because I enjoy two things, Bigfoot and taxidermy, my friend. Are you there, Doug?
I'm here. I'm staring at you.
Oh my God, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, you scared me there for a minute, Doug.
Look,
you creeped
when
in.
I first saw the Bigfoot doc, I literally went and hit the rewind button and watched it again instantly. And that never, ever, ever happens because I'm picky. Yeah, I watch.
You are. You're
documentaries.
diva-ish. You're almost like you're a film snob, is what you are.
Yeah,
I'm just being honest.
But
your standards are high.
But it was so good, I rewound it. Watched it again, and I think I've seen it twice more. So
really?
Let's get Ken on.
Yeah, let's get the ball rolling here. Ken Walker is the star of Big Fur documentary. It's a documentary now airing on Amazon Prime. Check that out if you have Amazon Prime. He is a world champion taxidermist. He also built the most realistic life-size Bigfoot based on the famed Patty from the Patterson-Gimlin film. So, and that was way back in 1967. Of course, that film emerged. Rather, I want to say debuted, but it was emerged. Ken specializes in recreating extinct and endangered species out of other animals' hides, like his famous saber-toothed tiger and giant panda. Wild animals are not the only way Ken can make a lifelike impression. He used to be a professional Roy Orbison impersonator. Oh my God, I love the Roy Orbison. To top off his skills, he is also a serious and knowledgeable Sasquatch researcher. Ken lives in Canada, the Great White North. Ken, thank you for coming on to Untold Radio AM.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot, guys, for inviting me.
Hey, not a problem. Our pleasure. Definitely our pleasure.
So I got a question.
Go ahead, Doug. Kick her off.
I really need to hear this because I don't think I have the answer. The first time you saw the Patterson-Gimlin footage, when you were, I would imagine, younger, obviously, what was your gut reaction? Your instant, that instant, visceral gut reaction. What did you think?
I was pretty young when I saw it, and really, to be honest, in its raw form, it really, you can't really focus on any of the proper details. I mean, you can see that whatever it is man-like. It's walking upright, but it didn't have the impact, in its raw form. Like it's shaky, like there was no stabilization or anything like that. But years later, when I just happened to click onto one of the versions on YouTube where it was slowed down, stabilized, and zoomed in, I probably took about 3 seconds and I said, "That's real." It blew my mind. I'm just watching the way this thing, drags its legs forward, has its knees bent. I'm looking at, and I can see right away that the shin is shorter than the femur, which is not human. That's ape. And it draws its leg forward. Its shin is parallel to the ground because the foot is longer, the shin is shorter. Plus, it has that bent knee compliant gait. And as soon as I saw that, and the other thing that really struck me was how wide she was. Now, you have to remember, if you put somebody in a costume, you can't get their shoulder joints apart. So usually when they make something wide in a costume, your arms will stick out at an angle. But this thing, and I know from my measurements that her butt was 28 inches wide, and yet her arms hang straight down, which puts the center of her shoulder balls almost 36 inches from center to center. I defy anybody to go into a gym with a tape measure and find some dude with, shoulder joints center to center 36 inches apart. The parameters were way off of what I was used to looking at.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would think that it would just be a done deal just from the footage because you can't change joints.
No, that's true. But you see, the problem is that this is something that I do for a living and have done for a long time. So I have I guess you would say a trained eye. But to the average person, it's upright. It has 2 legs, 2 arms, and to a trained eye, they don't see those things. And I understand that. It's almost like I read a really good article where a guy found a Sasquatch footprint and he took a picture of it, some footprints on a swamp or something, and he worked at a hospital, and the foot doctor there took one look at the footprints and said, "That's not human. It has no arch. The shape is all wrong." He basically just said, "That's not a human track." But yet to the untrained eye, it's long, and it's got 5 toes and 1 big toe. It looks like a human track. But to a trained eye, like to this foot doctor, he knew right away as soon as he saw it that it wasn't human. So it was kind of the same thing with me seeing the Patterson Gimlin footage slowed down and stabilized.
Is that what made you want to become a Sasquatch researcher too? Seeing that film?
Actually, no. I had a couple of friends in this industry, the taxidermy industry, and of course I know, I see all the hunters, but I don't just see any hunters. I see the successful ones because, you have to be a successful hunter to go to the taxidermist. Mm-hmm. So I had a friend of mine, a very good taxidermist named Wade Pearson, and his grandfather had passed away, but before he did, he gave him his car, And he told him that he was in British Columbia walking out of a logging camp when he was a youth, and he encountered a huge Sasquatch on the way to town, because he had to walk from the camp to town in those days. And he told my friend, he told Wade, he said that when I got to town, he said that I got on a train and went back to Edmonton, he said, because I couldn't go back to that camp and tell those guys what I saw. And he said he didn't, know if he believed in Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but he said, I saw what I saw. And, this is a guy who's at the end of his life talking to his beloved grandson. He's not going to lie to him. And when Wade told me this story, I thought, that there's got to be something to that. I just know that guy wasn't lying to you. And then another taxidermist named Ray Lavore, he's an old-timer here. I just actually did an old bear of his. Him and his sons both encountered Sasquatches in the Brazil. And it was those two stories that made me start looking. And I started investigating within the hunting community. I didn't really want to talk to the mushroom pickers. I wanted to talk to the hunters, I had something in common with them. And it's actually mind-blowing how many hunters have seen a Sasquatch or encountered one and never tell anybody. It's mind-blowing how many. I've said it before, I've probably talked to more hunters who've seen a Sasquatch than have seen a wolverine.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I just talked to a Bigfoot witness today, and I asked him, have you ever seen a wolf? No. Ever seen a cougar? No. Ever seen a black bear? No. But he's seen a Bigfoot, walked right in front of his car.
Yep.
It's powerful.
And I mean, it's and the stories come out of the blue, like the accounts. I was talking to a couple of friends of mine. I have a friend, a lady, she's a really good friend of mine. I was having a glass of wine with her and her mom, and they invited the neighbor down, and they wanted me to tell Sasquatch stories, so away I went. And finally, this neighbor said, I never told anybody this, but when I was 9 years old, at the Brazil, again, out west of Edmonton here, she says one of these things walked out of the trees, walked right up to me, looked at me, and she says I was frozen with fear, and it walked back into the trees. She said I couldn't move. It was huge. And she said it gave a huff, and it walked back into the trees. And she said, I've never told anybody that story till right now, because I know you believe me. And both of these girls were sitting there with their jaws dropped, And this is how these accounts come out. There's quite a few out there.
Yeah, I'm always under the impression 1% actually go and report it officially, like to the BFRO or some site.
Yeah, and isn't it 500 a year? Is that what the number is? I think somebody said that. I know, because I've had dozens of people in my shop that have, encountered a Sasquatch, and not one of them has filed a report.
Yeah. Yeah, so even if it's 10% that report it, there's about 8,000 reports that have been logged now, through people like John Green or the BFRO or whatever, if you add them all up. If you times another 90%, it gets to be quite a big number.
Yeah.
Why the hesitation? Just really quickly, just kind of a question for both of you. Why the hesitation to report? I mean, is it the ridicule? Is it worried about people thinking they're crazy? I mean, what's the biggest reason that you guys hear for not reporting?
Ken?
Ridicule.
Yeah.
Absolutely, without a doubt, ridicule. And if I have somebody come into my shop who's been ridiculed, it's like pulling teeth to get that account out of them. It is unbelievable how people fear ridicule. It has a devastating effect on the average person. And a lot of the people, and hunters especially, used to be ridiculers themselves. And then, of course, once they see one, they just clam right up. And I told people in my investigations, the last guy I really want to talk to is the guy who wanted to see a Sasquatch. I love talking to the people that wish they'd never seen one. They make very good witnesses.
Well, sure, it's the chance encounter, too. I mean, that you discussed a couple of eyewitness accounts, and both of those were just right place, right time.
What's your best and weirdest account that you've heard from a hunter, Ken?
Probably the weirdest one was what happened to me myself when I was guiding a couple of Norwegians. We were north of a place called Midtgwap Lake, and something was walking around outside the tent in the middle of the night, and it was mumbling. And I got to know Adrian Erickson really good, and he told me that they mumble. And he told me this later, and then he made the sound that they make, and that was exactly what I thought. I thought the closest thing I thought it might have been was a murmuring cow moose, but it was walking with like almost bipedal heavy footsteps. And right about that time, one of the hunters, a guy named Tura, he got up and went out of the tent to pee in the middle of the night, and he let out the most blood-curdling scream that I have ever heard. And then he passed out. And we went outside and we grabbed our rifles, Bjarne and I. We drug him back into the tent, and we were trying to wake him up. And then he kind of came to, and he was saying in Norwegian, he kept saying, "I'm so dizzy. Where am I?" And we told him what happened, and he said, "No, I wasn't outside the tent." He said, I wasn't outside, and he crawled into his sleeping bag, and within seconds fell into a deep sleep. And that guy had no memory. It was like his memory was erased. And it was the strangest thing. And he didn't remember anything, but like it really scared me and the other guy. And I found the tracks the next day, but they were in soft, wet grass, and they looked like big grizzly tracks, but there was no front feet. There was just back feet. And this was before I was looking into the whole mystery. This is one of the accounts that I revisited, and I'm very, very sure that was what we had encountered that night. And I have heard of similar stories, just a few, of people saying that they had their memory erased and were put into a deep sleep. So I find that weird. That strikes me as weird. Well,
is it fear?
And I wouldn't even bring it up if I didn't. I corroborating reports. I have a different theory. I think it's something electromagnetic. Because as a hunter, I've been using these hex suits they basically are a Faraday cage right in your clothes, and everybody has electromagnetic signatures and a sensitivity to it in one form or another. Now, dogs communicate with it, like wolf packs. I'm pretty sure that it's electromagnetic energy because, when you have that's one of the reasons we bond so well with dogs. Dogs can sense what we're feeling. Now, imagine maybe a creature that has taken it to a completely different level. Now, I know a lot of people have talked about infrasound, and it's a good theory, but I just don't see where infrasound would have time to evolve or a place to evolve when the electromagnetic phenomena is with every living creature. Mm-hmm. So and I've had people, like really good researchers, tell me that these creatures will read you. They will know what you're up to before anybody knows. They know when to show themselves, when not to show themselves, and so it's something that I consider. I don't like forming theories without a lot of backup, but I have used dogs. I have taken dogs out and called in Sasquatch and had the dogs literally turn inside out because of something that was there, and have them then like shaking, like peeing themselves, and almost lose complete control of themselves with fear. And and I know that they're sensitive to this energy, so I have kind of proven it. As a matter of fact, Dan, when we were filming Bigfoot, right at the Alberta habituation, in the exact same spot where it is rumored that Jeff Meldrum saw a Sasquatch, in the exact same place.
Oh, wow. So you've seen animals reacting, dogs specifically to the presence of Sasquatch.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Acting erratically and acting with great fear.
Yeah, and you can look at the accounts. You know, I know I've heard stories of people with cougar hounds. They won't track. A lot of the missing 411 accounts, the dogs refuse to track. You know, there's a common thread in canine behavior when it comes to, you know, if you read the accounts, there's a common thread with dogs being completely thrown off when it comes to Sasquatch.
Mm. I'd like to put you in touch with another hunter I talked to actually yesterday. Mm-hmm. That was just out with two friends putting up camera traps, not doing anything Bigfoot related. And suddenly this very experienced hunter got extremely confused, didn't know where he was, started spinning in circles. The other two guys had to get him out of there. He got in the car, you know, and they drove him away. And then he's like, well, why am I here? Didn't have any memories.
Yeah, there you go. There's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another one. And you know, the thing is that, you know, they say everybody has almost like a different frequency. I've not seen, like in that situation, it was just one of us. It wasn't all three of us. It was targeted. And this is what you just told me, proves the same thing to me, that out of, you know, more than one guy, only one was affected. It's almost like you could tune in on him. And so I find this very interesting.
Yeah, the other two guys, no effect at all. None.
Yes. Yeah.
But the guy that was affected was the woodsman. I mean, he is an amazing hunter, tracker. He's never had an experience like that. And it was in a very, you know, you look at the map and you look at it and it's like very Bigfoot type area.
Okay. Which state, if you don't mind me asking?
Minnesota. Right on the Canadian border.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm familiar.
North of or Minnesota. Yep.
Very familiar with that area. I've hunted there many times.
Yeah, I'll have to put you in touch with him.
Yeah, well, this is the reason why when I was had one of those episodes once when I was out alone looking, and it was almost like having a nightmare, but I was still awake. I didn't like it at all. And, you know, I guess some people call it being zapped. And I knew what was happening because I had researched enough to know. But now, like, if you go, there's a company called HECS, HECS, Human Energy Concealment Systems, and they sell these suits with the Faraday cage inside of them that blocks electromagnetic energy from coming in, both in and out. And I don't go in that country without one of those suits on anymore. And I've had animals walk. Yeah, animals walk right up to me. They don't know what I am. Even my dog doesn't know who I am when I put that silly thing on.
So Ken, you're totally convinced though that the suits work and do have an effect on other animals, you know, deer and so on, moose, sensing you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've had experiences. I've had coyotes walk up and sit down and look at me with no trees in between us. You know, I'm in white camo, but they don't have my wind. And the thing is, this is Alberta Beach, Alberta country. I mean, a coyote, if you slow your vehicle down at 500 yards, that coyote is flat out because they're worth money here and everybody shoots them. And this coyote, two coyotes actually, walked right up to me and sat down beside each other and were looking at me puzzled. If you look at if you go on the HECS website, you will see people with these suits on walk right up to a wild turkey with a bow and shoot it. Now, a wild turkey, usually if you take one step towards it at 100 yards, it flies away. But birds are very sensitive to electromagnetic energy because they use the poles of the earth to actually navigate when they migrate. And really, they said a turkey's, you know, the turkey can't be checking out every bush it walks by. It knows if it's a bush or if it's a living animal. But the thing is, you put this suit on and you become a bush.
So animals have a super ability, basically, to detect signals. That's extremely fascinating.
Is it kind of like a stealth camouflage? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you at all, but it's kind of like a stealth camouflage where you're interfering with their electromagnetic processing in the animal?
Yeah, well, what it does is it acts as a Faraday cage. Like they showed people with instruments that you walk in front of it and the needle goes right over. Then you put the hex suit on, and they've figured out the exact size to make these squares out of carbon filaments in the clothes to block the signature from a human. And then when you walk past it, the needle barely moves. It just kind of sort of moves, And so what their theory is that animals trust the sensing of you probably more than seeing you, which this has been my finding too. Now, they trust their nose above anything else. If they wind you, it doesn't matter. They will run. But if they don't have your wind, even if they see you and they can't sense you, they do not believe you are what you are. And it's been very effective. Now, I noticed the same thing with cam trackers. Like stealth cameras. When we put a camera out on a deer feed, to take pictures of the deer at night when they're feeding, so we can see what kind of bucks are in the area. You'll get all kinds of smaller bucks and a handful of medium bucks, but very rarely do you catch the really big guy. And if you do, you get one picture of him. He's looking at the camera. And they say that when a deer gets to be a certain age, they're smarter than about 90% of the people who are hunting them. And I believe that. And I also believe that the deer, from my own personal experience and talking to other experienced hunters, the deer can sense the cameras as well. The more older and experienced the deer, the more likely it is to avoid a game camera. And that would explain an awful lot about the inability to catch Sasquatches on these cameras.
Mm-hmm.
So, do they make a Faraday cage for a game trail cam?
I talked to the guys at a trade show in Salt Lake City, and I brought it up, and they looked at each other, and they were already onto it, and they said, we're working on it. And they said, you actually picked up on something that a lot of people don't. He said, we've had the same experience too, so we're trying to make a game camera that doesn't have the same signature, that blocks the electronic signature that it gives off.
So interesting.
So it's all very fascinating, but it's all theory, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is all theory, but I mean, I guess my question is Bigfoot, the species Bigfoot, using this same electromagnetic interference to camouflage itself from us? I mean, why can no one see one?
I had somebody bring me a lady. She saw a Sasquatch on the highway west of here, and she went into there and she showed me the ground. There was Sasquatch tracks all over the ground. This was in British Columbia. And they put up cameras, and she said she was getting a lot of the cameras going off and nothing was there. She showed me one picture where it looked like it looked like an outline of a Sasquatch. You hear these stories, and she showed me this picture, and I looked at it, and it most certainly looked like that to me, but I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time buying that. Okay, we'll say that right now. But I did see something that made me think. And I try to base anything that I come up with off of what I get from reliable witnesses and cross-referencing and things like that. A lot of people talk about UFOs and Sasquatches. I have yet to have any of these hunters tell me they saw a Sasquatch and a UFO. I'm not saying that people haven't seen this. I'm not saying it's not a thing, but I have not encountered it in any of the people I talk to. So I just like to bring that up. I don't like to bring things up that I haven't had, some sort of reference to from witnesses. I like to try to build a picture from the little pieces that I'm given that are reliable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Ken, don't you think that there's just tons of super abilities of animals we just don't know about yet?
That's right. And I was just going to bring that up, and I'll give you an analogy, and this is a good one. Like your dogs, your wolves, your coyotes, they're all very successful in the wild. okay? But when it comes to vocalizations, you know your dog growls, it yipes, it howls, it barks. You know, it has a very, shall we say, limited vocabulary, but it does have a vocabulary. Very limited, very rudimentary. Okay, now you talk about a human being. Now, when it comes to sounds, you know, you can sit down and they will recite to you a poem from the 18th century, or they will talk about the cosmos. Like, they will make your mind reach out beyond the galaxy with things that they've learned from, for example, the Hubble telescope. So, I mean, it's what we can do with sounds, whether it's opera music, you know, whether it's anything. It's far beyond the comprehension of a lot of other very successful mammals. Now, imagine, if you will, the rudimentary electromagnetic skills of your average dog, you know, or your average animal that uses it. Imagine if an animal was able to take electromagnetic energy and the manipulation and the reading of it and to the same and evolve it to the same extent that we've evolved sounds. You know, it's like to the point where it's literally beyond our comprehension. You know, so this is the analogy I like to use. Is it possible? I think it's possible. Probable? Well, that's another story. But, you know, when you look at and the Sasquatch, you know, undoubtedly has a bigger brain than we do. You know, and you also have to remember, too, that we, as biological entities, we all create electricity. Now, some animals are more specialized than others, and they say, well, like a little eel, the size, you know, a foot-long eel, an electric eel, if a horse steps on it, it'll electrocute and kill the horse and the guy riding it. You know, and it's just a little eel. Well, imagine if you weighed 1,500 pounds and you could create an electrical current. You know, I mean, it's within the realm of acceptability. So these are things that I think about. I like to think about things that are already biologically proven, and then adapt them to something, you know, that is in all basically smarter than us. And, you know, it's funny because everybody says, well, man's the smartest animal on earth, and I always say, I have an argument for that. You know, that what we do better than any other creature on earth is we compile knowledge. And, like, we take knowledge, like if you look at a pen is made of plastic, it's got ink in it, it's got, you know, metal working parts. But there's about 1,000 years of research that have gone into making that pen, whether it's refining the plastic, whether it's refining the metal, you know, coming down with the lathes and you know, the technology. It's compiled. There's probably 1,000 years of it in there, you know, or years and years and years anyways, of collective knowledge put into just making a simple pen.
I'm not aware of anything that Sasquatch has invented.
Well, I mean? No, but that's what I was saying is that if you put up one of them up against us one-on-one, they see better, they're stronger. I mean, the thing can bench press a Tacoma, you know, and also too, like with the research that's gone into the Sierra Sounds, they have a pretty good model of it being able to process information about 3 times as fast as we do.
The question then for you is, if they have these super abilities and as a group they're far superior to us, then why hide from us?
Well, that's quite easy to answer. The reason that they would hide from us is because they understand us perfectly. There was 6 species of hominid on this planet at one time in coexistence, and now there's only 1. And I've listened to all of the theories of what happened to the other 5 species of hominid, but we all know what happened to them. We have this very good ability of getting rid of things that we don't want to compete with. And,
but isn't that no, Ken? Not to stop you at all, but isn't that kind of like the whole premise of survival of the fittest?
Yes and no. There is also a lot of ecosystems that rely on symbiotic relationships. You know, a lot of your animals that are similar don't seek to wipe out the similar ones. They tend to, you know, like in Africa, in the Serengeti, they have the zebras, they have the gazelles, they have the kudus, and they all play a part in predator control. They all basically have a symbiotic relationship. But where that breaks down is where you have something that's so intelligent that it uses learned behavior. And
man definitely, exactly, as I say, man is definitely, I've said this before on the show, is the apex predator on Earth. I mean, we're so good at killing that we have to have seasons to stop ourselves from doing so. And that's how efficient we are at killing. And that would be another reason, in my mind anyway, if I was a species like Bigfoot, I would not want to make myself known because of our propensity for killing.
You know that if you listen to the history of the Sasquatch when it comes to the old native culture, there was a lot more interaction between the native tribes and the animal that they all have a name for that alludes to the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot. In those days, they were on equal footing. But with the advent of guns and traps and poisons, it's a whole different ball game. One of my things in the hunting community that I do is I seek out any kind of report of somebody shooting a Sasquatch. I know it's kind of taboo in some circles to talk about such things, but I'm always trying to chase down that one lead that could basically render conclusive proof. I make note of everything, but I really, if something looks like it's going to give physical evidence, that's where I really, jump into action, and that's the ones I really chase. And I can tell you, there are a lot of accounts of people shooting Sasquatches. A lot. Of course, the Sierra Kills comes to mind. That one, I found that one on the Taxidermy Net forum when Justin was a member of the forum, and then he mentioned it, and so I contacted him, and that's how that whole thing started. I ended up abandoning that because the more people that got involved, it just got silly, and so now when I find a similar account as what that one was, I don't share them. I usually investigate them to a conclusion, or basically see if they will bring up any evidence. But I was at a hunting show in Salzburg, Austria 2 years ago, and I went and talked to some people, and there was a guy that used to live in America. He was an outfitter. He was booking hunts for some European hunting. And we got to talking about this subject because I bring it up all the time. I just want to hear what people have to say. And this guy sat up and he says, I shot one of those things just south of the Canadian border in Montana. He says, I shot it with my .338. He says, and I hit it hard and it ran away and I never did find it. And everybody started laughing at this guy. And this guy says, you guys can laugh all you want. I'm telling you. And so there it was. I was in the middle of Europe, and I ran into a guy who had one of these encounters. Like I'm not a big proponent of shooting these things. I don't think there's no reason to shoot one unless your life is in danger, and I don't think that's really the way to solve the mystery, even though a lot of people do. It's very difficult for me to justify killing something that intelligent.
But do we need a body though for scientific purposes, Ken? I mean, maybe two of them. I mean, really, seriously, we kind of do need a body.
We, as a matter of fact, I've provided DNA evidence. Forget about DNA. I had a biologist sitting right in the shop where I am now that I worked with on a museum project. And these guys are great once they retire. They'll talk to you once they're retired, but bam, when they're active, they won't. And he told me, he said, do not chase DNA. He says, if you got it and you think you have it, he says, preserve it and keep it somewhere. But he said it will take either a whole body or, in the very least, he said, a skull. He told me, don't even try anything else. He says, I'm telling you straight up. And that was good advice as far as I'm concerned. He says, if it can be explained away, it will be. Is basically what he was telling me. Yeah. And, I think it's going to I think it's going to, well, that's what it's going to come down to. And also, too, if you have such a thing, bringing it into the public in such a way that it can't be explained away or hidden is also going to be a bit of an ordeal, because in my investigations I have come across, basically anecdotal evidence over and over again that there is a knowledge of these creatures in higher circles.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, I completely believe that.
Yeah.
That there is a knowledge of these creatures, or we've had several guests that have also collaborated that there is definitely a knowledge. But I mean, of all your hunters that have taken shots at Bigfoot, did anyone tell you about killing one? And if so, what became of the body?
Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, I got to be careful because I'm still working with this one, but yes, as a matter of fact, these creatures can be extremely dangerous, especially where they're young or involved. And very often when you see the Freeman footage, or you read the account of the Patterson footage, or even the Sierra kills, these animals don't normally make, or these creatures, these beings, don't normally make mistakes, but when young ones are involved, that seems to be when they do. They seem to be compromised by the inexperienced. And so I did talk to one gentleman that got himself in a proximity to a young one and had a female try to kill him, and he killed her. And it left a very good description for me. Basically, he told me that they're not animals. He said they're hominids. He said they're people, but just not us people, is how he put it. But then he was instantly surrounded by a lot of other ones, and they carried them away, the dead one. There was 2 dead ones when it was all said and done, and they carried them away. And he said they buried them above ground because it was wintertime. And he said they all gifted the grave, which is religion. They all left a stick or a bone or something. But when you encounter somebody who's actually experienced something like this, it really has almost like a PTSD effect on them. All of a sudden you're starring in a horror movie, and it's really, really difficult to get people to want to talk to you again, want to take you places, to show you things. It's, I've seen this time and time again with people, especially if they have encountered Sasquatches in close proximity. It's really a horrifying experience for a lot of people, and so you have to be extremely careful and extremely sensitive when you're dealing with these kind of accounts. And like I said, I got this account a while ago, and I was and I trust the source 100%. I can tell you this, but the follow-up has been it's been non-existent. I just haven't been able to make anything happen, and I've kind of let go of this one, even though it's still somewhat alive. And I mean, there's a guy right in town here, in Alberta Beach, and he's an outfitter. And when he was young, he shot a Sasquatch. It was on the ground eating berries. He thought it was a giant black bear, and he said it stood up and it put both hands on the exit wound, and started to scream and ran away. And his uncle came and looked at the tracks and the blood because he told him what had happened, and he threw him in the truck and drove out of there. Never said a word to him. He left his camp up and everything. Just never said a word.
Wow.
Put him in the vehicle and left. And that guy has seen one more on another occasion. So he's seen 2 Sasquatches close, and he follows accounts. But I'll tell you what, this guy, he heard this podcast right, and he'd come over and slap me around because he doesn't like me telling people. And that's how it is with a lot of these guys, But I mean. And it's like I tell everybody, I says, you may as well say it if you can't prove it. You may as well say it if it's true. because people are going to choose whether or not to believe it or not. And I'll be the first to say that even photographs, even the Patterson footage, it's not as good as it is, and as much as it's been studied to death and never disproven, is never going to be conclusive. You know, so I mean, what's the harm?
You're always going to have that group of naysayers, and you got the believers, and you got the disbelievers, and you got the fence riders. I mean, that's really how it is.
Yeah, and I get it, you know, and I mean, I used to, when I saw the one 30 years ago that ran across the road, it just made total sense that it was a Sasquatch. Plus, now I realized I was in the right spot. And it ran up a hill without slowing down, and it was running faster than I've ever seen any man run. Basically, if you've seen the Memorial Day footage, that's what I saw. And the guy with me said, "Is that a Sasquatch?" And I told him straight to his face, "No, they don't exist," because I did not believe at the time that they existed. But in hindsight, knowing better now, I realized that is pretty much what I saw. It makes 10 times more sense that that's what I saw. You know, and now the loggers tell me that, yeah, that's where they live, south of Kidney Lake. They're always in there. And I went back into that area, I should also tell you, and found very, very old tree structures that had to have been, you know, they match the ones in the habituations that I've been to. So
interesting.
You know,
yeah.
Do you want to go into a little more detail, Ken, on your sighting?
Well, I was in an area, I was hunting bears. You know, we used to drive down an old road called the Simpson Timber Road in a place near Blue Ridge, Alberta. And back in the day, this road, I went for about 20 miles, and there was no side roads, no nothing. It was cut through wilderness. There's a lot of side roads and clear cuts and logging and activity in there now. But back then there wasn't. And so I was about, you know, halfway down there, 10 miles in, and I yelled bear because I saw a bear break cover way up the road. And then I said, no, that's a man. It ran across the road, it cleared the ditch, and it was moving. And I said, who is this guy? Why is he afraid of me? And it wasn't a big one. And I just crested the hill when it broke cover, and it went up that hill. Now, I've seen bears run uphill. I've seen all kinds of animals. Nothing goes uphill without slowing down. This thing didn't slow down. This thing had momentum like I've never seen before. And it ran straight into bush. I figured there had to be a cut line or something there. So when I drove by slowly, I was looking, and there was no clearing that it ran into. It ran into thick bush at a breakneck pace. And that whole sighting never really sat right with me. I never forgot it. There was something just off about it. And then all these years later, I can put it into context and say that, yeah, you know, it made far more sense that that's what I saw than a person. And I went another 10 miles without seeing a vehicle parked on the road. And, you know, who dresses in black from head to toe in black bear season? You know, and there was no, and I mean, it was at dusk. So what I figured it was probably an adolescent or a younger one, like more of a human size. And I believe that the big one probably heard us coming and crossed the road just before we crested. And the other one hesitated, and then out of fear, it broke, when we crested the hill, it broke cover. Mm-hmm. And because that makes sense to me, because I thought, well, if this guy's a poacher, you know, because that crossed my mind, I said, if a smart poacher knows just to stand behind a tree and wait till you drive by, you know, like, how hard is that? But I think that was very much the scenario, because it was only when we just crested the hill that it broke cover. Mm-hmm. So there's a very good chance that it was behind one, a bigger one. You know, that's a theory, just a theory, but it makes sense to me, you know.
And how steep was the hill that it ran up?
Well, it was. They used to on the sides of the roads where they cut the road in. They used to seed clover onto these hills because they would erode down if they didn't get that clover root structure in there to erode them away. And that's where we look for the bears, is on those clover hills. Mm-hmm. And it was seeded pretty heavily with clover because it was quite steep. Not as steep as something you'd find in the Rockies, but it was for out in that country. It was. Let's just say that it doesn't. You couldn't just run up that thing without.
Yeah.
Without having to really. But then look at the Squamish Sasquatch video, how effortlessly that thing goes up that mountain. It goes right. And I hunt sheep, so and in wet snow, what that thing does in 2 minutes is physically impossible for a human.
Yeah.
And but it reminded me of the same thing. It just went up a hill without any effort.
Yeah, that's. I've ran up many hills, and you don't run. You just you get 10, 20 feet, and then you slow down to a snail's pace.
Even a bear will slow down going up the hill.
Oh God, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Ken, have you ever had or heard any experiences of symbiotic relationships up there in Canada? Where hunters have reported seeing a Bigfoot with a coyote or a wolf or anything like that?
No. No, and as a matter of fact, a friend of mine who's a trapper that I glean a lot of information because he knows a lot about these creatures, told me that that literally in the valleys when they set up in a valley, he told me that everything literally leaves. Everything. There's no wolf tracks. There's no nothing. They other animals just vacate when these creatures set up. He says it's very, very rare to see to have actual activity where the Sasquatch are. So I have heard accounts to the contrary, but at the same time, I have heard more than one story of horses not being spooked by Sasquatch, and I find that interesting because if you're ever riding a horse and a moose comes out, you want to see a horse go crazy, more so than a bear. Like for some reason, when they see a moose, they just lose it.
Yeah, I've heard that before from people that ride horseback and have encountered moose in my area because we have moose in northern Minnesota. And it spooks them like crazy, like you're saying. And why they would have a different reaction, who knows?
You wouldn't think it would, though. Moose are, they're herbivores.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's just something off about them to a horse. Like, they look close enough to a horse to be a horse, but not quite. It just kind of rubs them the wrong way, I guess. But I've talked to a lot of people who like you say hunt off horseback, who have said that you don't want to encounter a moose when you're on a horse because it's hard to hold them. But yet I've read lots of accounts of them coming around horses and the horses being okay with it, with the Sasquatch, and even some of the BFRO accounts that I've read, But so I find that interesting as far as a symbiotic relationship. But I think that if they have this this electromagnetic ability, it would make sense that they could use it to affect other animals. That would make sense to me. But I just don't have enough anecdotal evidence on that. We know they hunt. We do know they hunt.
Would it be the disruption you're describing? Would it be for hunting purposes? So they have a better chance of getting a deer or getting a skittish animal because they're so large. They're going to need the advantage.
Yeah, well, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I never forgot about that. There's a really good account on the in Texas, the Sabine River, and I was actually down in Texas, and I was talking to one of those hunt ranch owners whose best friend had seen a Sasquatch on the Sabine River in Texas, and so he was totally on board with him because his best friend saw one and told him. So we looked up the accounts in that area. And there's an account in the BFRO database where a guy was in a tree stand and all of a sudden a female Sasquatch came creeping from one side. There was a bunch of hogs in front of him, and it let out a scream, and the scream seemed to confuse the hogs, and this thing, made a couple of leaps on all fours and actually punched one and killed it. And so, it used the scream to disorient them. And then, like he said, the thing picked up the hog and then turned and looked at him up in the tree like it knew he was there the whole time. And it's a great account. It's one of my favorites. I know a lot of these BFRO investigators, and I think they do a really great job personally, like with these accounts. But so that made me think of, and the trapper told me there was two big beds on a dead moose. They were consuming a moose on his trap line. And he said in that there was no birds, there was no nothing on that dead moose. No grizzly bears, no wolves, no coyotes, he said there was no tracks at all, just two Sasquatch beds on this moose being consumed.
Interesting.
Have you
given any thought, Ken, to the fact that the sightings throughout history have always taken place right near water, very near water? What are your theories?
Well, if you kind of look, I believe that they use the waterways as migration routes or as trusted travel routes. Even when you have a river running through an area, like let's use Texas as an example. There's rivers that run through some pretty open country, but there's always 100 yards of brush on both sides.
Yeah.
So they can use it as a corridor, and they can hunker down in the daytime and travel at night. Just west of me, there's a river called the Pembina River, and I know there's so many sightings along that river, but there's especially a big bump in sightings in October when it seems like they're moving back up into the mountains towards the headwaters of that river, which incidentally is where my friend's trap line is. And he says they all gather in October, November before they head into the mountains for the winter. This is what he told me. And I've heard people in Alaska say the same thing. And then another thing he told me was that you don't see any small or medium tracks from the first snow till March when the snow. He says you only see the big guys, the big 19-inch, 20-inch tracks. He says they come into his wolf sets and they eat all his coyotes. They take the coyotes out of the snares, or they don't take them out. They rip them out. And he says they'll eat the coyotes. That's all they'll eat. But he says that it's almost like they put the other ones somewhere, and then the big ones go out and gather the food, which would make sense for something that intelligent, to survive these winters. But also, as soon as you get up into those mountains, into the foothills of those mountains, you're never going to find them up there because it's inaccessible. Like there's no snowmobiles, there's no snowshoes. You're not getting into that country. It's it's treacherous. If you go on the wrong slides, you can get caught in an avalanche.
Yeah.
And it makes total sense that they would go there in the wintertime when they're most vulnerable.
Yeah, and where was the Patterson creature? Bluff Creek.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I absolutely believe that they stick very close to waterways, and also too, I know a number of lakes where there's no access. They're just little lakes, and they're not a long ways from here, but there is high tree breaks and structures and all kinds of when there's no roads into these lakes, it's almost like they live in there. They stay in there, and you get a real bad feeling when you go to these lakes. You almost have to turn around because you just get so uneasy. I know of 3 places like that that I really want to go back and spend some time looking. Take 1 or 2 people with me, and go in there and just go in there and just spend a little time and just see if we can find tracks or structures or anything.
All very interesting. It just seems like there's a whole social construct that they have as well when you're describing, the hunting, the gathering, and the storage, and things such as this. It's very interesting.
Well, it's not hard to find places where people never go, even in places that are close to big centers. I'm sure in northern Minnesota, there's just places that are so remote that people just don't go there. And these creatures know exactly where people go, and they know exactly where they don't go.
Sure. That makes sense. They know best because they live in the woods. The woods is their home. So, we're just visitors in their home when we show up.
I literally Googled best online life insurance. Ladder Life Insurance popped up.
Got an estimate, and I was like, wait, what?
It's like a third of my household's cell phone bill.
Congratulations, you have life insurance.
Get your peace of mind right there and then.
Here's how Ladder works. Answer a few quick questions and get your personalized quote. If you're eligible, Ladder will cover you with the tap of a button. It's that easy. Come see for yourself why customers love Ladder. Check your price now at ladderlife.com/life, featuring real stories from real customers.
Yeah, and they tend to be nocturnal as well, and that's a big plus.
I've been wondering, though, if there's not using the water source for more food, more fish. They're eating something that they require the water. I realize they're obviously corridors, but you do wonder how much they're utilizing the banks and the rivers for food and fish, because like when that wolf footage came out with the first wolf that was, they put a camera on it, they realized the thing was eating a ton of fish. It was going and fishing. They had never seen behavior like that. For a wolf.
Well, the rivers are rich in life, just rich.
Exactly. Yeah.
Succulent plants, all kinds of creatures. There's thousands of beavers here on the rivers, and they have these trails where they go up to cut wood. It would be nothing for a Sasquatch to just punch one. There would be no problem for them, and that's one of the richest sources of protein in the world is beaver meat. Second richest, I believe. They could eat just that. That's all. Those waterways are so rich in food and resources, and of course water itself. It makes all the sense in the world.
Yep. A listener just wrote in and said, every study area I've ever worked involved a water source.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
But we think about it, even as a hunter, I'm an avid outdoorsman, avid hunter. Any creature that you want to encounter, you can find by the water.
Yeah.
They all have that same drive. They need hydration, they need food, and rivers can supply in both of them.
But don't you agree though, Ken? It's these types of constant patterns of the water sources that convince you that they're real, because this is not spurious information.
I can tell you another thing that frequents the waterways. It was me when I set up my camps. The first thing I look for is a water source.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have a camp, I want to be able to scoop water that I can clean with, that I can, that I can wash with, boil if need be. I always camp near a water source when I'm hunting.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true.
I've got another question for you, Ken. I got a million of them, but so many of the activity in Minnesota, which is, in some ways similar to like Ontario and whatnot, but the activity seems to be increased in the areas where they have logged. And of course, we know those areas attract more deer and, in many ways, more wildlife. So what is your thoughts up in British Columbia? And actually, you're in Alberta, aren't you?
Yes, but we have a lot of logged out areas as well.
But don't you think the logged out areas seem to be where there's more activity? Has that been noticed?
What I would say is I don't think that they have more activity. I just think that they're more accessible for people.
Okay.
And so you have more, you can see farther, and there's more, there's a lot more of a chance for you to actually encounter one and see it. I talked to a couple once. They said that they were somewhere. I can't remember where they were. I was down in Montana, and they were in western Montana, and they stopped at a gas station along the highway, and they were eating breakfast, first light in the morning, and looking out this big picture window, and across the highway was a mountainside that was clear-cut. And they sat there eating their eggs Benedict and watched Sasquatch walk across the top of the clear-cut along the trees while they were eating breakfast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it hadn't been clear-cut, they wouldn't have seen him. So I think that one of the reasons that you see more in these areas is because they're more accessible for people, so you end up with increased amount of people in there, an increased amount of eyes, and a better chance of seeing something. Right. And I think that's what it is.
But certainly edges attract more wildlife. Just any kind of edge, I guess.
The old Ojibwe, they called them the edge hunters.
Yeah.
And they knew that if it was the edge of a pine forest, if it was the edge of a river, didn't matter what it was, was where the terrain changed or the vegetation changed, that's where the Ojibwe would hunt.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And the Sasquatch, I believe, is just as smart.
Well, it's the same way in a lake. When you go fishing, you look for structure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You look for the edges. Right. You look for the drop off. Whatever. Yep.
Yeah, especially if you're after them pesky walleye in a tournament or something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So okay, let's get back to Patty a bit. Time is just zinging by. Oh my goodness. But you gave away your Patty mount, and we want to talk a bit about that. Mm-hmm. You must be. I guarantee you got to be thinking about doing another one, Ken.
Well, I have all the molds here. I kept everything. I made quick molds. I have body molds. I have everything. I don't even like to say this, but I'm going to say it. I could have done a far better job than what I did. But really, I had to consider Dan, and I had to consider Dan's deadline, and I had to make time to do this project so that he could finish his film. He invested his life savings into making Bigfoot. And so I did as best I could in the time that I had, but there's a lot of things that I want to change out. And I saw in one of your posts today, somebody actually put up there, and they said that the fur I used, the Highland steer, was too long, and it ended up being too light. And they're absolutely right. But you don't know until you get the model done whether the fur is too long. And Patty had shorter fur than what I did with the Highland steer. And I'm actually actively looking for another type of cow hide, because it's hair, not fur, that is intermediate between a regular cow and a Highland steer. And we re-dyed Patty and made her darker. She was, there are some that are that light orangey color, but, the vast majority of them are darker. And when we took her to the Sundance Film Festival, we had made her a lot darker, and she looked way better. She looked a lot more authentic. So I have everything to make another one, and I plan on making more. It's just that everything is so expensive these days that it's really difficult to make anything that isn't commissioned right now at this juncture, because I'm just a single guy living in this house paying all the bills all by myself, and with carbon taxes and everything, it's really tough.
How many hours, Ken, did you have into that Patty recreation?
I never kept track, and for these recreations, I don't like to keep track, because if I did, I would never do another one. Time is money, and if I had to figure out how much money and time I actually, they're labors of love. I don't do them for money. I do them to see if I can do them. It's a whole different mindset, and so I just do whatever it takes, and I try not to think about it. But I did her in stages. I had to do it in stages. I had to get some jobs done to pay the bills, and then I would work on the form, and then I would have to get another job done to pay the bills, and then I would, get the hides and skin them out, tan them. And so I kind of did her in stages, and Dan would fly back and forth when I had everything ready for the next stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the next one will be a lot easier, because the body's built, the head mold, I've got one hanging right above me. I'm looking at it right now. I'm going to redo that. I'm going to use silicone for the skin instead of urethane. I felt that it was far too plasticky. Even latex would be better, but I'll very likely use a latex or a silicone.
How did you really quickly? How did you base your measurements on Patty to get it right? And how big?
Well,
in your estimation, how tall was she? How wide was she? And how much would you think that she would have weighed?
Well, first and foremost, I don't trust anybody's size charts but my own. I have to prove to myself that and I had the size chart from John Green, the one they measured the site. But what I did in one of the frames, the frames of the Patterson film are really good. They're really clear. And in one of the frames where you can see the bottom of her foot, you can see all the toes and well, they made casts that day, and you know that foot is just under 15 inches long. So what I did is I made a measuring stick from that photograph of the foot, and then what I did is I went from joint to joint, the same way I would template an animal like the ones I did for the Smithsonian from photographs. And I go to pivot points, the center of the shoulder ball, like where the shoulder pivots, to the elbow, to the wrist, and then I took the actual foot, and I found out that the head was the exact same length from top to bottom as the foot, which I found interesting. And this is how I saw that the femur was longer than the shin bone, and that the arm ratios were bigger. And also, I should tell you that the elbows, if those were arm extensions, the elbows would be in the wrong place, and they weren't. The arms, her arms balanced perfectly. And so there is no arm extensions. They just have a bigger, longer arm. Their torso's longer, their head is bigger. And so when I was finished my size chart, I pulled out John Green's, and mine was identical. She's just under 7 feet tall.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was identical.
So many people have tried to figure out through, photogrammetry how big it is. But to me, the best way to do it is the way you did it, with the known footprint length.
Well, there it was. Yeah, I mean that was a very well-known measuring tool right there. Just use the foot.
Sure.
And then I just I made little diagrams, and then I extrapolated. I would add this is a foot and a half, foot and a quarter. How many inches is that? I had the ratios, and so I sat down. I had a whole bunch of scribbles on a piece of paper, and I came up with my own size chart. And then I went to John Green's. I didn't look at them at the same time. I only looked when I was done mine, and it was identical. They did a real good job when he measured that site. He did a very good job.
Yeah.
How much you figure she weighed?
This is where it gets interesting. As a hunter, nobody knows. You can't really guesstimate the weight on something past, let's say, 800 pounds. But I can tell you that a 9.5-foot grizzly, a Swan Hills grizzly here in Alberta, is like 890 pounds because we weighed one. Okay, but they have a lot less muscle mass than a Sasquatch, and that's a fact. The limb weight is huge, and I've talked to the trappers about this, and they said, and even the trapper told me, and Adrian Erickson also, we had this conversation. He said the same thing. He said a Sasquatch is easily twice as heavy as people think it is. And I remember Bob Gimlin in one of his interviews saying that his horse didn't sink in as far as Patty's footprint.
Yeah.
And when they, you've probably read the articles where they had the ratio where the height and they came up with a weight, and they said the weight was like 1,300 pounds, and they thought that had to be wrong. But if you know anything about the weight of these animals, when they're massive muscles, like massive chests, massive arms, a big grizzly bear is muscle weight, and they don't have near the muscle mass that a Sasquatch has. So I don't think it's, to say that Patty's 1,200 pounds, I don't think it's off at all. From what I know about, weighing, hanging up a moose or a big grizzly bear or even a giant black bear, just from what I've seen, and compared to, the physicality, Now the trapper encountered a big male Sasquatch at very close range, and he when he first told me about it, he told me, he says, "I'm not going to tell you how big this thing is because you're not going to believe me." And I said, "Did you measure the footprint?" He said, "Yeah, I did." He said the footprint was 18 3/4 inches long. I said, "Your creature was 10 feet tall." And he said it jumped out in front of him and looked at him. He said his legs were as big as garbage cans, as round as garbage cans. I mean, that's one bear. Like one leg is like one great big bear. And he said it jumped behind the tree, and he said it had like a hunchback. You know how they get kind of humped over, those big males? He said it was 9 feet 10 inches slouching. He measured the tree. And then he said it ducked and it ran, and he said he's never seen an animal that massive move that fast. He said it moved like lightning, and it was gone. It ran away. He was worried that it wasn't going to run away. And he said that animal easily...
Spring is here, and it's time to get your car in road trip shape. Let Walmart's Auto Care Centers do it for you. With over 2,500 Auto Care Centers open nationwide and certified technicians available 7 days a week, it's never been more convenient. And it's a great way to save, with tire balances starting at $12 per tire, oil changes starting at $19.88, and free battery installations with purchase. So visit your local Walmart Auto Care Center today, or go to www.walmart.com/ACC to learn more.
He said easily was 1,500 pounds plus. He said easily, probably more. And so it is an interesting thing. Now people aren't used to judging height over a certain height. So this is a story I got from Adrian Erickson. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying it, but he had commissioned a bronze sculpture of a Sasquatch that was 10 feet tall. And he would take people about 100 yards away from it, and he would ask them, "How tall is that sculpture?" And he said they all said the same thing. They all said it was 7 feet tall. And that makes sense to my sheep hunting buddies too, because they said, nobody can judge a ram over 200 inches because nobody's seen one. And people they always defer to the familiar. And when you're looking at something bipedal, 7 feet is about the maximum that you're even going to believe, So when you hear these guys saying it had to be 8 feet tall, there's a good chance it was taller. So you got to bring in the fallible nature of people, unless you have something to actually measure it against. So I find all this very interesting. But I think that they're outside the parameters that we believe they are.
That's really interesting, because I tend to take what you're saying to the bank more than other people. I really do.
Well, it's at the end of the day, who knows what about these creatures? You extrapolate information and then you cross-reference it to try and get yourself a picture. But did you Ken have any major revelations building, Patty?
Just any, kind of the hair on the back of your neck stood up?
Well...
I'm talking about the anatomy.
I probably got a lot of empathy for her, because when you put something into perspective like that, while it's standing in front of you, like before the hide went on, it's too bad that I had to put a skin on it, because the sculpture, as you'll see in the movie, was really nice. If I'd have had the shorter fur to put on it, the next one's going to be great. I just know it. But you realize that if you're looking at a biological entity, everything balances. Everything balances. It works. There's nothing that looks like it wouldn't work in nature. She was balanced out like a real creature. And you realize that, you're looking at something that probably raised young ones, probably held hands with them. It probably sat down under a tree and probably enjoyed a good day just like we would. I started to understand that the nature, like I started to have empathy towards the plight of living in a world full of people that are so unpredictable, or even so terribly predictable at times. And you can really see why all of the things that we know about them ring true. the way they hide. I mean, they have this ugly face, this face that they probably, they think looks great to each other, but to us, they're kind of this hideous, this kind of an ugly look that would scare us. I just felt like I was looking at a very, very misunderstood creature. So I think that that was probably the biggest revelation was being able to put the whole thing into perspective and gain a little bit of empathy towards this creature.
That's a great answer.
I think that's an honest one.
So I'm going to sneak one more in before Joel. I can see in his eyes he's got a bunch too. But God, we've only got like 11 minutes here.
Well, you can edit it. You can just keep talking. You can edit it.
So, what is your take on the smooth walk? I mean, I studied that for years, and my take was not only, of course, the compliant gait, with the bent knees, but also that the legs were going kind of in and out in an S or a fish pattern or like a gait, like a gaited horse. Basically you are an anatomist, versus you're probably one of the most highly trained anatomists, on the earth because of the work you do. But what is your thought on that, on the walk?
What I see in that walk that is so beautiful to me is momentum. It's like a pendulum. And you have to remember that nature always takes the path of least resistance, like electricity. And with that walk, once they have mobility, and this brings back to how heavy we truly believe this creature is. If you think about it, there's no other way it could walk. It couldn't walk with a heel strike if it weighed 1,300 pounds. But when you see that fluid motion and that, just the way that they move, it's almost like what they're doing is they're using absolutely no energy to preserve momentum. And of course, the bent knees, you can't have the kind of wear and tear with a stiff-legged walk. It basically has to walk that way, almost like a car with really good shock absorbers. To me, when I see them walk, it's almost like poetry in motion. And the other thing I noticed too, and you'll see this in other videos that are taken from a distance, it always looks like they're pulling their legs forward. They step back so far, but the reason they step back, the reason that they take such a long stride is because when we walk, our foot bends at the ball of the foot behind the toes, but our arch is fused. Now, their foot flexes, and then it flexes again before they draw it forward. So they're going to take a longer, smoother step just because of the anatomy of the foot with the metatarsal break. And so you have that kind of rise and pause, that rise and fall that they have, and that's because they just invest a little bit more in one stride than we do. And then, of course, bringing that leg forward with the shorter shin and the longer foot, the shin is parallel to the ground, and you literally can't walk that way. And so that's I think that walk you're talking about, the way they do that is once they get moving and they get into that gait, they expend almost no energy. They basically are using their weight and momentum. I think it's extremely efficient the way that she walks.
Right, and then how do you explain the tight rope, straight line, one foot exactly in front of the other compared to us, with the staggered walk?
I think that again, that shows a tremendous amount of weight. And what they're doing is that they are they're centering. They're basically keeping their leg underneath the weight in the center. If you think about it, it's very efficient because if they have to move from side to side, with that step, they would expend so much extra energy just trying to correct their momentum. So I think that the momentum, basically, they have to walk the tightrope in order to keep the keep the balance under all that weight.
Yeah, see that
it makes total sense to me.
That's probably the best explanation of keeping the weight centered. When you said that, I'm just kind of got a chill.
Yeah.
Is it all about energy? Oh, sorry. I just had a thought creep in my head.
No.
The way it's moving, is it all dedicated to energy conservation? I mean, because it does have a strange gait, and you guys were describing how it's walking. And it would seem that it's doing everything, because something that big, his or her world comes down to expenditure of calories and getting those calories to keep going.
That is right. The expenditure of energy in the wild is the difference between life and death. You know, the stakes are very, very high when it comes to that. The more efficient a creature is, the more likely it is going to pass on its genes in the wild. Because they have so many, storms and weather and floods and drought. Lack of prey, lack of food. There's so many variables that every calorie is based on survival. But you'll find, that rule is with every animal in the woods.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So that
makes complete sense, because look at the way deer act, look at the way wolves act. Like you said, it's all dedicated to survival. Every move that they make in the wild is dedicated to survival.
That's right. You have your we have a week of minus 40, minus 45 degrees. Mind you, you're in Minnesota, you get that too. You wonder how the deer survive. Well, I'll tell you, the late fawns, like if they breed on their last cycle and the fawns are born late, those ones don't usually survive because they don't have the body mass. And yet, the farther north you go, the bigger your white-tailed deer are, their body mass. And basically, it's the minus 40 temperatures that weed out the ones that are smaller. And that's why their body mass is so much bigger when you go north. So the environment... it has a great effect on the survivability of creatures. And I think that all comes down to... It all makes sense with the Sasquatch, too.
Is Sasquatch a migratory creature? Do you think when the weather gets really cold, do they tend to move out, or do you think they hunker down and go deeper into the wilderness?
No. It's funny because, I'm a big moose hunter up here, because I put a moose in the freezer and I eat very good for a year. And, but the only time to get a moose, really, the best time to get a moose is late September, early October. And the reason being is because that's when the moose are rutting, and when they're rutting, they're moving. So basically, if you want to know when an animal moves, look for the spike in their sightings. And from what I can tell with the Sasquatches, that's right around October, November. Mm-hmm. And I think what they do is, at that time of year, they shift from a winter location to a summer location. They seem to be everywhere when the foliage is on the trees, but once the foliage falls off the trees, they can't be in certain places. So they tend to move. And I've heard so many people say that they have a movement around October, November, and that seems to be when the most sightings are here even. So what I tell people is, when you aren't seeing an animal, it's because it's not moving. When you are seeing animals, it's because they are moving. Yeah. So I think the Sasquatch moves at least. It has one major movement at least once a year, from what I can tell, from what I can extrapolate. But although there is sightings also sometimes in the spring, but not to the same extent as in the fall. But it seems like they don't come into some of these areas that I go to until the foliage is on the trees. And once the foliage is on the trees, you are just not going to see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's too thick. There's just no way you're going to see them after that.
Yeah, so I mean, it makes sense to me, but like I say, it's half theory. It's just a theory extrapolated from, known information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, did the time ever go by fast? Jeez, Ken, where did it all go?
Welcome to my shop. I mean, it's great to sit here and talk because I'm secluded out here. There's nobody here. It's driving me crazy. Nice to have somebody to talk.
Yeah. It's already been an hour and a half. So if you tell the audience where they can see your work, any websites you have, and of course how they can get a hold of you if they decide to, if they want to email you their sighting or talk to you, why don't you go ahead and tell them your contact info and websites?
Well, I have a couple of Facebook pages. I have one that I try to make everything public on my personal Facebook page. The reason I defer to that so often is because so many of my friends are on there. I get to see, I can get a hold of them quickly. There's also a Ken Walker site that my neighbor set up for me a long time ago. I go on to that if somebody... I seem to get a lot of questions about Big Fur onto there, but really, for the most part, I don't get a lot of people contacting me. Really, and I just wish I had more time. This summer. I want to spend more time out and about and looking into things. I haven't had a lot of time to, But I mean, the Big Fur is on Amazon Prime. The Big Fur movie. There's also a really good movie called Stuffed that is playing. I don't know where it might have been on Amazon as well. And it's another taxidermy movie. It's just mostly taxidermy. It's not Bigfoot or anything. And they make me look like a lot more serious character in that one. But I'm in that movie a little bit. And there was another one I was in 2006 called Taxidermy Stuff the World. I've been in a few taxidermy documentaries. But really, cool. I guess if people want to see what I'm up to, I guess, I have work posted on my Facebook page, and that's about it.
All right. That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get a hold. Everyone can message you on Facebook, follow what you're doing. But unfortunately, we got to run, Ken, and we're at the end of the show. So thank you so much for coming on. And everyone look up Ken Walker.
Stay tuned for a YouTube channel. I do have a YouTube channel I just set up, and stay tuned for that.
Very,
cool.
Very cool. Doug, we're out of here, man.
Yep.
It's been an end of another show that goes so quickly.
Awesome.
They really do. And so everyone take care of each other, love each other, and keep looking for Bigfoot. He is out there. Maybe you're the one to find him. Who knows? Good information tonight, though. Again, if you are looking to contact Ken, the best way to do that, of course, is to get him via Facebook. So we're all on Facebook, so you can get him that way. See you guys.
Take care.